Synchronic is the brand new film from directors Benson and Moorhead, and I'm just going to let you know right up front that I'm going to be pretty vague with the synopsis because I feel like, as usual, everyone should go into this shit as blind as possible. Now, Benson and Moorhead have made 3 films previous to this, being Resolution Spring and The Endless. All of the films that I quite enjoy a good deal, and this would be added to that list. This is, up to snuff with the rest of their catalog. So I feel like this is, another very good entry in their filmography. And this stars Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan, and they play 2 EMTs, ambulance EMTs, and they are called to these very bizarre crime scenes where there are people dead or talking crazy, and they find a packet for a drug called Synchronic, which they think is responsible for what's going on. And so Anthony Mackie's character, who is dealing with some extra stress from some recent news, he goes to investigate this drug. And Jamie Dornan's character is also dealing with an enormous dramatic event as well. As I said, vague, right? We're keeping this vague because I think blind is best with these movies. But our main character, Anthony Mackie here, he tracks down this drug, takes it himself, and figures out why this is happening to everybody, and that's as far as I'll go with it. The drug does something, and you'll have to find out what when you watch the movie. If you want to know more than that, you can go and Google it, and I'm sure you can spoil the fuck out of the movie for yourself. But for now, I'm keeping it to that. Now, I really like that this film was set in New Orleans because that area has very, very rich history, and that plays into the film very, very much. The performances are great. The look, the aesthetic of the film is great. The dialogue is really smart, as one would expect with these guys behind it, although only one of them writes it. And then the other one is the one who edits it, I think is their roles. Like, they both direct it, one writes it, the other one edits it, and then they both produce it. I think that's their roles that they play within this. But whatever, they do great stuff here. I'm not really sure where I would rate this. I haven't seen Resolution and The Endless in quite a while, and I sure shit haven't watched them back to back yet, which I should because of their connection, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely, arguably, their best movie that I've watched. But I know a lot of people love Spring and The Endless, so that might be a controversial take. Don't care. I did really enjoy this, and there's some really good mystery going on here, which keeps you very engaged. Now, I will say that there are some things in here that are quite predictable, but I didn't let that bother me too much. I didn't think it hurt the overall story. Even, I've said this before on the channel, just because something's predictable doesn't mean it's bad. Now, not everything is predictable, but most of the stuff that's supposed to kind of be twisty for me was like, well, I saw this coming, for the most part. So, but I try not to ever go into that with like, oh, wow, look at me, I'm so smart, or wow, if I figured it out, it must be a dumb movie. No. I think that as long as the film is told well, it's shot well, it's acted well, it's a good flick. Like, I'm not going to shit on a movie because I predicted a few things that happened, and that seems extremely unfair. But when I mention that, I usually mention that because I think it's something that most people are probably going to be able to guess. So be prepared for that. But that all being said, I definitely think that this is a really good science fiction, dramatic thriller with some horror in it. So it definitely falls into the horror category, but that would be in the later genres, if I was to put them in order of how I feel this film is, I would say we'll backtrack there and we'll say a dramatic science fiction thriller horror. There you go. But yeah, like all the stuff when drugs are taken, that's all like the real money shots. That's where all the cool aesthetics, that's where a lot of the great atmosphere comes from. That's where the meat of the story and what you're there for. So all the drug taking and what happens during those, that'll be a spoiler kind of ish, and we'll leave it at that. But whatever happens during that time, I think is really, really cool. And reminds me of some other films that I quite enjoy. Anytime that films get into like drug use and they're really artistic with it, something like Midsommar, I love that kind of stuff. So I personally have never done psychedelics or drugs of really any sort outside of marijuana, and I guess some people count alcohol as a drug. So I can't personally attest to the visuals that are put into movies like this and how it compares to the real thing. But because I don't do those things, I always find it kind of cool to see these things, since I'm too big of a wimp to do it myself, or I have too much self-respect. I don't know what it is. I'm not knocking anyone who does them at all. I don't really know. I just have never had the desire. But when I see it on screen, I'm always like, is that what it's like? Oh, wow. Okay, at least I get to see it. But I would never want to do that shit. It looks awful. Now, this drug is not realistic at all. This is very science fiction. So prepare yourself for that. But there's a lot of people who are like not into the sci-fi angle. This is first and foremost, I said dramatic sci-fi because there's a lot of drama. But, this is much more science fiction than horror, for sure. But I love this kind of shit. I love these kinds of movies. So this is right up my alley. I dug the hell out of it. Benson and Moorhead continue to crush. And I will be looking forward to what they do next. And Anthony Mackie just keeps doing all these really interesting science fiction action things, whether you count the MCU films that he's been in, or Altered Carbon Season 2, or the Black Mirror episode, Striking Vipers, or, this guy just keeps doing them. So he must really be into this shit, and he's great in this, as he is in pretty much everything he's in. So, really cool film. Let me know when you watch it. Adios.